Why you need to own your asset data and not just accept it. I was talking to a client this morning about this, and I thought, I'll do a video and explain this. One of the problems you get with data is often put together by a bid team. It's often out of date. It's often inconclusive. These three things alone are a problem because the bid team have one goal in mind. That's winning the contract, not dealing with the contract. Their assumption, I would assume, is win the contract, and whoever ends up taking ownership will sort everything else out. So that's the first thing. The data gets out of date because often, like with a bid team, they bid on existing data which could already be 7 years old. So they're not too keen on trying to throw in some new data in there that can show there's actually a price increase, because the client wants to hear of price reduction, and that's the reality. And then they're inconclusive. Inconclusive because the data is not kept up to date, the data is not expanded out, the data is not identifying what is missing. A non-intrusive survey, for example, is very likely not to pick up your fire dampers, your fire shutters, your entire heat and ventilation system if it's hidden above the ceiling, and as such these bits of data get missing. If the data is missing, it's a good chance the client's not paying you for it, which means you may be servicing stuff for free, and at the same time the client may think you're doing a bad service because you don't really have the budget to do this stuff, because you don't have the money, because it was never in the contract. So there is a lot of reasons that you need to own the data. And then you get on to compliance. What happens if there's a Legionella outbreak? What happens if somebody is hurt in your building due to a compliance failure? What happens if there is not enough relevant information that shows that these things have been maintained, have been serviced, have been kept compliant? Because you know what? The one person is responsible is you. And this is why I say own the data, because if you don't, there's a good chance the data owns you. In the sense that if something happens, the buck stops with you, you're the person responsible for it, and saying, well, I didn't know, doesn't really help you. You need to turn around and own the data. The same with life cycle and things that are on their last legs. You need to be going to the client and saying, you know what, this only has about 2 years left in it. We need to be looking to replace this. And this is why ownership is the most important thing. If you do it right, then the first thing is it becomes your client's problem, because your job is to inform them of the relevant information, and if you've got the right information, then you're doing your job. When they turn around and say, don't do that, it's fine. It's not your building, it's not your budget, it's not your money. Your job is to inform them that it needs to happen. So when you turn around and go, okay, fine, I have made you aware that this needs to be done, and you've told me no, and just keep a record of it. Because what I find too often these days is there is too many people changing hands. They'll go into a contract, then next month move out. Now, one of the big problems with that is data ownership, because what happens is anything that's been ongoing while they were there, especially if it's a new contract, has disappeared, because often there's not a good transition where the data is handed over. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there tell me it's all fantastic and great. I'm talking from a realistic point of view, because a lot of the problems I've dealt with and do deal with could have simply been sorted out with a good handover. The other thing is people leaving without the with all the training knowledge, because you set up a contract, it's based on SAP, Maximo, whatever, and the people that were trained on those bits of software leave the business. You get a new administrator in from the agency or whatever, they are not familiar with your system, but they're very likely to not have access to it either. So at day one, your data is going backwards. It's not being updated. It's not being kept relevant. It is where people go, asset surveys are a waste of time. They're always out of date, blah, blah, blah. It's because the data is not being kept up to date. The people that need to be maintaining it often leave the businesses, and this is down to ownership. And all I can say as somebody that manages facilities is own it. If you've lost 3 guys because they were there during the transition period, and you do get that handover period where people simply decide they don't want to work there anymore because some of their friends have left or whatever, own it. You need to replace those people with training. If you go to head office and they go, well, we don't have the budget for that, you just turn around and say, it's the only way to keep the system up to date. We need at least 2 people trained on it. It's all about ownership. Thanks for watching.